So over the last couple of years, it's no secret that our dollar has been losing value. Now, if you're watching this video, chances are you live in the United States and can understand that our dollar crashing would result in day-to-day expenses such as gas and groceries skyrocketing, along with investments and most importantly, retirement accounts all being in very vulnerable positions. But what if I told you that all of these events that have led to the devaluation of our dollar are all actually being done on purpose? In fact, in a second here, I'm going to show you real undeniable evidence of how this is true. But right now, I'm sure you're all wondering, who's doing this? And well, the truth is, it's not Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum, although they are a part of it. It's not China, Russia, or any other country attempting to overthrow the US for economic supremacy. And no, it's not Bill Gates, although he's guilty for a lot of other things. The force responsible for the intentional sabotaging of our currency and ultimately our economic prowess in the world is actually our very own government. Don't believe me? Well, I want you to meet this guy. This is Congressman Alex Mooney, and he represents West Virginia's 2nd District. On October 10th, only 10 days ago, Congressman Mooney introduced an act titled the Gold Standard Restoration Act. And just as the title said, this act would put the US dollar back on the gold standard. In fact, here are the exact words from Congressman Mooney himself. The gold standard would protect against Washington's irresponsible spending habits and the creation of money out of thin air, said Congressman Alex X. Mooney. Prices would be shaped by economics rather than the instincts of bureaucrats. No longer would our economy be at the mercy of the Federal Reserve and reckless Washington spenders. Louder for people in the back. Come on, somebody.
Come on, somebody.
But as you would suspect, this got major pushback, especially from the Democratic Party, with one of the biggest naysayers of this act being Maxine Waters, a Democratic congresswoman from none other than the state of California, which, by the way, more on her later. But interestingly enough, as much as political leaders here in the US might be against leveraging gold to standardize our currency once again, well, the rest of the world feels very differently. As a matter of fact, countries such as Russia, China, and Turkey, that are all competitors to the US economically, have been stockpiling record amounts of gold over the last couple years. I mean, at levels where it's beyond suspicious, and you're sitting here wondering if they know something that we don't. And I gotta be honest, for me, this is where I got confused, because these countries are widely known to be part of BRICS, and over the last 3 years, BRICS has been developing and pushing a centralized bank digital currency that would rival the US dollar. And of course, the question is, well, if all of these countries are about that digital currency life, then why stockpile gold? Well, it's all probably because of this guy right here, Mohammed bin Salman, better known as MBS, aka the Crown Prince and Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia, who serves as the chairman of the Council of the Economic and Development Affairs. And considering what keeps our US dollar as the reserve currency of the world being two things, number one, our military, and number two, the fact that everybody has to buy oil from the Middle East utilizing the dollar, this makes MBS a pretty important person, especially if you consider that all oil companies and MBS can one day just decide, hey, we're gonna start utilizing gold for our trade instead of the US dollar. In fact, relations between MBS and the US are pretty shaky, mainly due to President Biden. I mean, it's at a point where MBS wouldn't even take Joe Biden's calls when Biden wanted to beg for increased oil production. And now we're having to tap into our very own oil reserves, as this very week Biden announced that we'll be releasing 15 million oil barrels from domestic reserves. And despite all of this happening, he still has no plans to meet with MBS at the upcoming G20 summit. I mean, honestly, I feel like these two should just go on a Dr. Phil episode and just hash all this stuff out.
I was just happy I left safely. Nobody cared about it. He's the one that blew this up.
Does that make sense to you?
But here's the most concerning thing. In the midst of all of these tensions, Saudi Arabia is now considering accepting the Chinese yuan as opposed to the US dollar for all of their oil trades. Now, at this point, you might be asking, well, Daniel, why is this important and what does this have to do with the video? Well, we have to remember that oil trades, aka the petrodollar, is one of the main ways the US dollar maintains its status in the global economy. And well, if they start utilizing the Chinese yuan or even just gold for oil trades, it's pretty much game over for the US dollar. Now, guys, with all that being said, ultimately, here's the truth. Our government wants our dollar to crash. They want the dollar to crash so a centralized banking digital currency can be implemented. Why? Because a CBDC would allow them to have more control and monitoring over us, the hardworking American citizens that pay for their salaries. In fact, Biden not only dropped the ball on relations with the Middle East, along with everything else that has directly or indirectly weakened the US dollar, but has also signed multiple executive orders like Order 14067, not to be confused with Order 66, which ensures the development of a US-based CBDC, and that happening efficiently and that happening well. Oh, and also, remember her? Yep, Maxine Waters, Congresswoman from California. In 2019, she founded the House Committee's Task Force on Financial Technology and Artificial Intelligence, which has been one of the biggest influencers and influences in bringing forth a US-based CBDC. But of course, everything has a price that must be paid. There's a price to pay for the implementation of this new digital currency, and that price, our freedom. The trade-off for the American government issuing a CBDC that would ultimately control and monitor our finances is a world where our economy would suffer and the average American would face massive amounts of financial hardship because the dollar will be replaced by the global digital currency. And as we said in the beginning of this video, the day our dollar crashes and loses its status in the world's economy, expect that day to be the beginning of gas, groceries, and other daily expenses skyrocketing in price. This will eventually lead to the American people facing financial hardship like we've never seen before. And of course, as it usually does, this will create a ripple effect as, mark my words, if things continue to unfold as they are now, I predict that within 18 months, we will see bigger losses in our savings, all retirement accounts, and net worth than what we saw in 2008. As a matter of fact, in 2008, the total damage was $5.6 trillion in losses that the American people had to suffer for. I predict if things continue happening the way they do, that number will be bigger. Now, before I wrap up, I honestly have to say one thing. Doing the research for this video, I'm not gonna lie, I started missing the guy we had before. And as much as some of you may watching have disliked Trump, well, at least he stood up to other countries that were taking advantage of us financially, especially China. And guess what? Our economy reflected that. I feel like it was just yesterday when gas was below $3, inflation was below 2%, not 9 or 8.2 like it is now, and the market was doing amazing. So again, that being said, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on the topic of this video. What do you guys think of everything that's going on? And of course, like this video for the algorithm, and per always, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.